You are watching George Schlackheck.
The one and only.
Hello and welcome to Bicycle Touring Talk, the series based on my book. Where is it? Destinations Are Fake. This is episode number 16. You can order this book on Amazon and there is a link in the description. This episode is all about camping and a few things that I've learned from experience. One of the problems of touring by bicycle compared to, for example, a road trip by car is that you cannot sleep in your vehicle. If your budget is limited, this can offset the savings in fuel. In my opinion, the best way of dealing with that challenge is to carry a small tent along with camping gear so you can camp wherever it's convenient or possible. As a cyclist, you're already engaged in outdoor activity, so camping outdoors takes us to yet another level, which most outdoor enthusiasts will probably appreciate. Now, there are other options than a simple tent. Camping trailers for bicycles are very rare, but they are available. I will leave a link in the description to one site that might give you some inspiration. Some cyclists have built their own. If you decide to go that route, I would definitely recommend surfing the internet for inspiration. There's a lot you'll come across, and some of it looks pretty exciting. While some of these trailers serve merely as a way to haul your luggage, others allow you to sleep in them too. I have no experience with camping trailers for bikes, so I will limit my comments about them here. Personally, I would not choose a trailer for bicycle touring because what seems like a fantastic idea at first glance will most certainly make your bicycle harder to maneuver. Besides campground, you may not find too many places where you can safely park your combination and crawl into the trailer to sleep. More often than not, the trailer would be rather awkward to deal with while on tour. In my opinion, one of the greatest things about traveling by bicycle is the almost unlimited maneuverability that you get with your bike. Pulling a trailer would most certainly take away from that. Further, even the most hardcore camper might want to sleep in a real bed on occasion. Cheap hotels are often available, and your bicycle usually even fits into a very tiny room. Keeping the bike in your room is secure and practical, and most hotels won't object to it. Even the ones that do usually have a secure place for you to lock up your bike. It would definitely be more of a problem though to find a secure place for a bike and trailer combination. Of course, in certain localities, the advantage of having your bed already set up right behind you as soon as you stop might outweigh the disadvantages. If you're intrigued by the idea, why not give it a try? Now, having mentioned trailers, my personal choice remains a small tent along with an air mattress, sleeping bag, and even a small pillow. All this will fit quite easily into one pannier. You will be able to use it whenever the occasion allows, and other times it'll remain in your luggage as a neat little package that won't even bother you. There are a few things to consider when it comes to buying a tent. In my previous videos, you may have noticed that my tent had some serious drawbacks. Well, when I first went shopping for a tent, the budget was one of my main considerations. The tent I ended up buying cost $35. It was money well spent. Over the course of several bike tours, the tent saved me hundreds of dollars in accommodation. It could have been more cost effective, however, had I spent just a little bit more money initially. My first tent had no frame. It relied entirely on one pole and the strings with the pegs to hold it up. You can't use that kind of tent on a concrete floor, for example, or even a very hard dirt floor. The problem became very limiting at times. There were occasions where I found a well-protected place where I was allowed to pitch my tent, and several other campers were already there, had done that, but I couldn't use the space because there was a concrete floor or some wood floor or something where I just couldn't get my pegs in there. One example was the roof I used for shelter from the rain in Grand Chenier, the one I talked about in the previous chapter. The roof was actually part of the remains of a strip mall, and the entire structure had a concrete floor, which would have been fine for any type of dome tent, some of which cost just a few dollars more than the one I was using. Thankfully, I didn't have to spend the entire night under that roof, but there were a few hours when it seemed like that was gonna happen, and pitching my tent in some way would have been the only choice I had, and I was wrecking my head about how I could do that. I highly recommend buying a good quality dome tent. The good ones don't come cheap, but there are options in all price ranges. I have used on a couple of occasions a cheap dome tent from Walmart to camp for a night, and that one didn't cost much more. Some of the main considerations when you buy a tent are the weight and the size. Quite obviously, the lighter and smaller the package, the more money it will cost. The same considerations apply for sleeping bags and sleeping pads. When you're traveling on a bike, the weight and the size make a big difference. I would also always recommend a two-person tent because it allows you to keep your panniers in the tent with you, which is way more secure than leaving them outside on the bike. And also, when it rains, maybe your panniers are 100% waterproof, but a lot of them are not. Aside from these considerations, buy the smallest and best tent you can afford. But this doesn't mean that you should postpone your tour until you have all the perfect stuff. Some tents cost up to $1,000, and this might be your dream tent. But think about what a nice travel budget $1,000 would make. Get a cheap tent, try it out. My tours are the perfect proof that you can even make the cheapest tent work for you. So if you're on a tight budget, definitely I would suggest spend more money on the tour and less on the equipment. A well-designed tent gives you more options, and it will be easier to set up and take down. In the long run, this will save you money and time. Now, I've even seen some higher-end tents that really interest me that have you supported off the ground, kind of like a hammock. I've never had the experience to try one of those out, so if you are trying to market such a product, keep me in mind. I'll test it for you. Now, I have had the privilege of sleeping in a hammock on several occasions, and I can tell you that it is way more comfortable than sleeping on the ground or on any kind of pad. Carrying a high-quality tent is almost like having your own hotel room with you at all times. In many countries, there are hostels that allow you to camp on their property for about half the price of what a dorm bed would cost, and you still have access to the bathroom, the kitchen, and the company. That's a great deal. Now, this video would not be complete without mentioning stealth camping. That means that you pick your own campsite regardless of whether it is, usually it's not a designated campsite. You just pick your spot and go for it. As far as I know, stealth camping is the only way to pass the nights for free, short of perhaps sleeping on a park bench. Now, to take full advantage of stealth camping, you need a tent that is easy and quick to set up, as well as take down. I've met people who have stealth camped for entire months-long tours and save hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars that way. For myself, on my first tour, stealth camping seemed like the perfect solution only on occasion. With stealth camping, you generally have no access to showers or bathrooms. Your food choices are limited to what you can carry with you, unless you stop and eat somewhere before you set up camp, which is not always practical. Then there's a very real risk of picking the wrong place. Imagine falling asleep in your tent after a long day of cycling, only to be woken up by some angry landowner in the middle of the night. You never really know what kind of person you're dealing with once this happened. So this kind of scenario obviously is never desirable. Someone might tell you to pack up and get lost. Or worse, they call the cops, or they stick a gun into your face. The key to stealth camping is to use your intuition, which by the way takes a while to develop. In the meantime, you pretty much rely on good luck. It is always a good idea to ask people. There are still plenty of opportunities to camp for next to nothing, and asking people is often the key to a free campsite. Sometimes people are intrigued by what you do, and a good conversation can lead up to an invitation. Sometimes people will allow you to camp on their property, but you will never know unless you first ask them. On my journey through Mexico, I met a young lady from Sweden who tended to camp at roadside restaurants in Mexico. Those are most often family-operated businesses, and like I said, she would talk to the waitress and tell them what she was doing, and then she was asking them, well, do you think you have a place for my tent on your property? And many times that worked. Often they even had some kind of shower for her, sometimes just a garden hose. But think about it, it's a good deal for them as well, because you're likely to wake up in the morning and want breakfast. So there you go, works both ways. Even if you decide to camp only on commercial campgrounds or state or provincial parks, it's usually a lot cheaper than any other kind of accommodation. And the difference with camping in official campgrounds is that you have access to basic facilities, which takes a load off your mind. Often you will meet other campers, which can be a good thing, but not always. On long weekends, campgrounds can be full of youngsters trying to party hard. Imagine camping next to a bunch of rowdy teenagers fueled on cheap beer. Perhaps you're the kind who couldn't be bothered by anything, but otherwise you might want to choose a different option for long weekends and holidays. Occasionally you'll even meet other cyclists in campgrounds, which can make for memorable get-togethers and even shared rides. Long-term friendships can result from that. In my opinion, for an extended bicycle tour, carrying some camping equipment is simply essential. Even if camping is your least favorite form of accommodation, it is something you can always fall back on. There may be times when you do not reach your intended destination for the day, or where you expected to find a hostel or a hotel, there is none. It's happened to me. Now in bicycle touring, it's never about the destination anyways. Those occasions where you end up camping in the middle of nowhere unexpectedly usually make for unforgettable memories. I promise you they'll be the best ones of your entire trip and perhaps your life. In the next episode, I will tell you how my tour went on as I was headed for Texas. If you want to hear about it, make sure you're subscribed so you get notified. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to catch up on some of my previous videos. See you next time.